Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar this evening. On behalf of the Northbridge Companies, I wanted to welcome you to tonight's event, Northbridge Family Panel, Life at Our Communities. I also wanted to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to learn about life at Northbridge. My name is Mel Horan, and I will be your moderator this evening. I have been in senior living for over 30 years, pretty much my entire adult life. I have worked with hundreds of families and have experienced senior living both personally and professionally. Everybody's story and journey is different. If you are joining us tonight, chances are you have begun your search, or as I like to refer to it, as a journey um, in looking for the right senior living community for someone you love. At Northbridge, we first and foremost want to always be transparent with you. That is why tonight you will hear from adult children who have a parent at one of our 18 communities. We are in the people business. And as you look around, of course, you're going to want to look at a nice community with lovely amenities, beautiful furnishings. You want a great location. You want the right price point. But what is most important for most people who are on this journey is getting to know the people. And it's the feel that they're looking for. Getting to know the people, our residents, our families, our associates. And you want to know and have an appreciation for how you feel when you meet those people, when you walk into one of our communities. So tonight, we're going to have an opportunity to meet and talk to those people who are our family members. And a couple of shots here. If you have any questions at all, there is a chat button. We had an instruction slide on the screen. So please don't hesitate. This is a casual, candid, and heartfelt conversation from all of us to you. And so please, and if we don't get to your questions this evening, we will absolutely give you an opportunity to ask more questions and answer them personally one-on-one. So without further ado, I do want to be respectful of everybody's time because God knows we've all seen enough Zooms in the last 10 months. So I do want to be mindful of your time and get right to the questions so that you can not listen to me, but hear from the family members. So first, I'd like to introduce Scott and Sue Richardson. Scott's mom, Sophie, lives at Stonebridge, our community in Burlington, Massachusetts. Stonebridge has independent living, assisted living, and memory care. Next, I wanted to introduce Chris Trout. Chris's mother-in-law, Pat, lives at our memory care community, Avita of Stroudwater in Westbrook, Maine. And next we have Jody Pocket. Jody's dad, Tom, lives at Stafford Hill in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Stafford Hill was actually our flagship community for Northbridge. And last, but certainly not least, is Wendy Nowakunski. Her dad, George, lives at Stonebridge as well. And by the way, Wendy is also the president and owner, along with her partner, Jim Coughlin, of Northbridge. Welcome again to all the panelists and welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining. I don't want to make this all about the COVID pandemic, but as we all know, it has had a tremendous impact on each and every one of us. And I would be remiss in not tying into the questions what we're going through right now. So I'd first like to just start out asking Jody, you know, these last 10 months, Jody, have been such a challenging time for all of us. How do you think things would have been for your dad, Tom, if he had not lived at Stafford Hill during this pandemic?
Mm-hmm. So my father moved into Stafford Hill directly from having lived in Florida for the last maybe 30 years of his life. So he had a very nice, tight-knit group of friends down there. I think if he wasn't at Stafford Hill and was still in Florida, I think they've been very complicated because most of his friends were elderly, as is he. And while they all sort of took care of each other and kept an eye on each other, I don't think they would have been able to do that. So I think he would have been lonely. I think having his immediate needs met over time would have been more and more difficult. He moved into Stafford Hill after suffering a fractured hip. And so if the pandemic had hit at that moment, I think it would have been very, very, very challenging for him. For me, which wasn't your question, him being that far away during the pandemic would have been unbelievably challenging, and not being able to get to him and to help and provide care, I think would have been really, really complicated. So I think it would have been disastrous, might be too strong a word, but really, really complicated and very difficult.
Okay, thank you, Jody. And I would have asked how it affected you as well, and I appreciate you bringing that up.
Sure.
And Sue and Scott, if you don't mind, I'd love to just ask you the same question. How do you think life would have been for Scott, your mom, Sophie, and frankly for the two of you, if she had not lived at Stonebridge during this pandemic?
So you want to answer that, or you want me to?
You go first.
Well, I mean, I can't imagine it, Mel. I can't imagine what a better situation or a different situation for my mother. I mean, she can't live with us. That's not practical. We looked at a number of other facilities. Stonebridge by far was the most impressive. It's nearby. It's professional. Prior to the pandemic, the baseline of my mother's existence at Stonebridge was really, really good. And so what else could be better? I mean, I'm not trying to be, too extreme here, but I don't know what other alternative there would be, Mel, that would actually work for us. I suspect we could find another facility of some kind, and I assume there's good ones out there, but the way Stonebridge has been for my mother during the pandemic, although the quality of her life is not as great as it was prior to the pandemic, that's true for all of us, it's really still good and better than it was prior to Stonebridge. And I don't see an alternative. Sue, does that make sense? I don't know, from what you said.
Yeah, and it does make sense, Scott. And when I looked at this question again today before we got on the call, I was thinking about the place that she was before, which admittedly did not have an assisted living component. So that is a difference. But I thought if she were there, it makes me cry. If she were still there when this happened, it would be terrible. And again, it sounds dramatic, kind of to Jody's point. Like, I'm not wanting to make it so extreme, but I don't know how we would manage it. And to your earlier point, Mel, about the feel of places, for me, I believe that the people of Northbridge actually within their true selves care, that it's not a good mission statement kind of thing. It is a good mission statement, but it really comes from the inside of you all. And I appreciate that so much. And she didn't have that where she was before. And if you don't have that during something like this, it's just terrible. It's essential, right? We need that warmth and connection during this. So
well, thank you both. I truly appreciate that from both of you. And I hope I won't embarrass you by saying this, but your beautiful Sophie's trombone, I heard when Scott was on, and Sophie, their daughter, I'm assuming is named after your mother. And so next time Scott speaks, I almost want him to pause for a moment so we can listen to the beautiful trombone in the background. That is one of the silver linings to Zoom. But thank you so much to you both for that. Wendy, as an owner, you've had to make some very difficult decisions during this pandemic. I would imagine those decisions, combined with being an adult child, somewhat have collided a bit. The decisions as an owner and hearing from your dad. I wondered if you might elaborate on that a little bit for us, and talk about that collision a little bit.
Sure. Well, thank you, Jody and Scott and Sue, for sharing your experiences, because, you know, it is a tremendous responsibility, obviously. You know, my partner, Jim, and I, we hold so true to the fact that we are caring for someone's mother, father, aunt, uncle, grandparent. That is, we wake up every day and go to bed every night understanding that. And the entire team at Northbridge feels that way. And it's so heartwarming to hear that you all see that and feel that when you go to the communities, because it is so to our core. So much so that, you know, my dad lives with us at Stonebridge. And I want to just give, if I can, just a little brief history that is not COVID related, but is so pertinent to understanding what living in a senior living community can do. And I have been doing senior living. I've been in this business for over 30 years. And I've believed in it and I've seen what it has done for people. But when it's your own family member, unbelievable how it just really comes to life. My dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's at 82 years old. He had an incident at his house where he fell. He moved in at 85. He was on a walker. He wasn't eating well. He had lost weight. He was drawn. I cannot express to you how proud, and people at Northbridge hear this all the time. I'm so proud of my dad, actually. Let me just show you this. This is him at Northbridge in the art studio doing his art. And he has thrived to the point where he didn't need to use a walker. He didn't use the elevator. He went up and down the stairs. He has produced 38 paintings. He has made friends, takes it upon himself to know and pronounce all of the residents' names. He is so engaged and full of life. He is now 90. He will be 91 in January. And he is just thriving. And it incredibly warms my heart, and I'm incredibly proud of him, of all that he's achieved. But I do understand now personally what it feels like, what all we do, what the associates do for our residents, not just care. You know, that should go without saying. It's caring about what they do, and it's caring about that person. You can provide care, but it's truly caring about what they're doing and having purpose and engaging. And that's what makes all the difference. And during this COVID epidemic, it is more important than ever that people have that connection, because we've all lost it, right? We all want to hug each other. We all want to go out and, you know, go to dinner and see friends and so forth. But can you imagine what that's like for a lot of seniors who are isolated in their home, who can't get out, who, you know, are scared because of people coming in if they need care, and who's monitoring those people? That's what we provide. We provide that security and that safety net. And making the decisions that we've made as it relates to what our protocols are, I am very proud of the entire company in that we came together very early in March and made the decision to make some very tough protocols and restrictions to keep our associates and our residents safe. And it hasn't been easy. And we are awake day and night. We have calls every morning, every night of the week as a senior leadership team to ensure that we're doing the right thing for our associates and our residents. And I do check in with my dad every now and then to make sure that, you know, that he feels that these decisions are the right ones from a consumer's perspective. And I also check in with him to make sure that things are going well. How are the, you know, how's the dining experience? How's the painting? How's the activity that's going on? So he keeps me on the straight and narrow, which is great.
Great. Thank you, Wendy. So I want to shift gears for a second and get off of COVID. And Chris, I'd love to ask you, I know your mother-in-law, Pat, has lived at our Avita Stroudwater for a while now, which Avita is an all-memory care community. And at what point prior to Pat moving to Avita did you and your wife realize that it was time to make a change? And I would imagine, I certainly don't want to speak for you, Chris, you had to kind of make that decision for her because of her cognitive impairment. So could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. And I'll just say that our history goes back all the way to 2014 when Pat and her husband Rod were moving here from Vermont. And we realized that Rod was not going to be able to live with her. And he moved into Avita at that time and was there for 4 or 5 years. She came to live with us when she was no longer going to be able to get a place. They were coming over to be near us. So she came to live with us and did so. And then a year and a half after she moved here, completely independent life, driving, taking care of herself and so on, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So Rod was at Avita and now Pat had gotten diagnosed. And so we had that long journey here where we went through the various stages of memory loss, not being able to take care of her financial affairs, all of those kinds of things. I fortunately worked at home, so was able to be here, fix her lunch every day, check, so on. But come one December, first I was up here in a Zoom session with a client, and I looked out the window and she was meeting her friend Bobby to go have lunch or something. It was an hour and a half before Bobby was coming. And she was standing outside with a very light jacket on in about 10-degree weather. Mm-hmm. And that was our first sort of clue. And then on another day, was up again in a Zoom session with a client, smelled something funny, went down. That morning, we had stopped and gotten her a new purse. And she had microwaved the purse with metal buckles, paper on the inside, the paper had burned, and so on. And after those two incidences, we knew that even with me here, working here, I had no way to keep her safe and still continue to work. The best part of that story is that she was very resistant to it. Started into the day program every day, didn't want to go, had to 3 days a week, we were pushing her to go participate. And Alex, the activities manager, director, we were talking about how we're going to make that transition. And she said, I got this. She had a really lovely relationship with Pat. And probably 4 or 5 weeks later, I'm driving home from work and I get a call. And it's Alex. And she says, your mother-in-law and I are sitting here in one of the apartments and she'd like to talk to you. Long and short of it is I picked up my wife. We immediately went to Avita And they've been sitting for an hour and a half in the window of this nice apartment. Pat has said, I think I'd like to move in here. And the sales manager said, well, and we had already chosen a date. She goes, well, let me see what we can do. And she goes and gets the big book and brings it in and pretends to look at it. And she says, well, how about February 28th? Pat said, well, that sounds good. And that was the transition. And
That's
as
amazing.
it turned out, we had to come about a week earlier because on the weekends, Pat was just incessantly on our case about moving in. I finally called and said, is there any way, please, can we move because I'm not sure we can do this.
Chris, that is amazing. I love that story. And so when Pat moved in, and she had transitioned from obviously her home, then to your home, and then to the community. How was that transition? And we talk a lot about programming and engagement for our residents. We talk a lot about lifestyle. What were some of the things that Pat was attracted to, and how did she adapt to that new community and lifestyle?
I was thinking about this part when you were talking, Wendy. What it seems like I should be referencing now is the activities program and the good meals and all those kind of things. And all of those were very lovely and certainly part of the deal for her. But that wasn't it. And you used the word caring, Wendy. It's funny, there's a TED presentation I saw once where the guy said, he had all teachers, hundreds of teachers. And he said, how many of you use the word love in talking about kids? And, smattering did. And he said, how many of you think love is at the center of everything you do? And 95% of the hands in the room went up. They didn't talk about it, but they knew that was part of their work. And I would say it isn't that the staff cared for Pat. I would say it is that they loved her, that she got unlimited hugs every day. I'll never forget being with Sue at something was going on in the lobby and they had jazz music and food and a little celebration of some kind. And I looked over and my wife is standing there and tears are streaming down her face. And we go outside and she explains that while Pat was standing there, 3 different staff had come up, stood with her, put their arms around her, told her they loved her. And she was utterly surrounded by love. And I think that's what she experienced every day. And I think we were toast.
Well, you just made me
at home
toast.
with me up in my office, we were toast. And
Chris,
that was the place to be. She was with her people.
Chris, you just made me toast. And, Chris, again, you've experienced this, and I frankly had forgotten that when we first started that both your father-in-law or Pat's husband had lived there as well as Pat. Is there anything that you would recommend to anybody that's watching or listening to this Zoom who right now has somebody that they love either in their home, having them like in their home like you had, or maybe, having care provided in the person's home with dementia or Alzheimer's? And they're thinking, maybe I should do this, but there's some guilt. And is there anything at all that you would recommend, having gone through it twice now, to somebody on this Zoom?
I think it's probably that, Sue went through a lot of guilt of when Pat moved in. Like, we should have kept her longer. We should have figured it out, all of that kind of stuff. And then we would go visit her and see what she was engaged in and what she was doing. And sometimes it was like, I can't visit with you right now because I'm doing this. Or Sue would go in and do Tai Chi with her, or whatever. And we'd think about her life here in the house with us. Yes, with surrounded by us, but with us needing to work and take care of other things and so on. And then think about her days there. And over as we drove home, we went, is there any question at all that her quality of life went up when she moved in? Didn't go down, it went up.
Mm-hmm.
As compared to what it was when she was living with us.
Thank
So
you.
I think understanding that reality is there and those feelings aren't going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
But with each visit, you go, okay, I'm getting it. So it would let go of a little bit of each time.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. And thank you so much for speaking from the heart like that. And while you were speaking, because you did bring up, Chris, something about the day program, and I do want to explain to those folks that are listening and watching this Zoom right now that in Maine, we do and are able to, because of the licensure in Maine, we're able to offer an adult day program at our Avita neighborhoods, Avita specifically memory care. Now, we've gotten hit with a pandemic, and in March, we stopped that program to keep as much exposure out of our community. And as you can imagine, with a day program, people are coming and going. So we have put that on hold through the pandemic. We will look forward to the day that we can open our communities back up in Maine specifically. It's the only state that we're able to have an adult day program. We will open that up again for folks that are listening and that are interested. I will say that it gives you that opportunity to stick your toe in, to get a feel. But if it's something that you are considering and you're interested in, number one, please leave your name and information with us on the chat, because we definitely would talk through that, because we also have winter trial stays, things like that for folks. So although we cannot do the adult day program throughout this pandemic, we would be able to do and chat with you about trial stay. So, and we do look forward to the day when this is behind us, that we can welcome our day stay members who are a big part of our communities in Maine. Okay, thank you again, Chris. So Jody, I'm back to you.
Yes.
I chatted a little bit with Chris about the programming, and the beautiful thing, and why I say we're in the people business, is because everybody's different. So as you can imagine, for our program directors, making sure that we're offering a variety of programs at our communities can be a bit of a challenge because there are so many personalities. But could you just give us a feel for how your dad, Tom, has done with the programming, what his interests are, and how that might have changed his life? And then the second part of that, Jody, would be, how has that, so the first part would be kind of prior to the pandemic. And then the second part would be, how has candidly that changed for him? Because it has during the pandemic. And how have we handled that?
Sure. I think one of the things that I have been impressed by is during the process of introducing him to the facility was the packet to fill out. So even before he got there, the staff was aware of his interests. And I was really, I filled out most of the paperwork because, again, he was in Florida recovering from his hip surgery. And it's pretty extensive, which was fine. But I didn't know how much to write, and I would call him and say, what do you want me to say? What do you want me to put? But it was great when he got there. They already knew what his interests were. And that made him feel really, really welcome. And to Chris's point, loved and cared for. And they knew his name, and they, Tom, how you doing? And one of the staff members immediately gave him a nickname, and she called him Tom Tom, and he loved that. But again, they'd say, we have trivia tomorrow morning, Tom. Would you like to come to the trivia? And he thought, it made it feel very, very personal, which he loved. And then he would tell me about it, and then I loved it. So yes, he goes to trivia. He loves music and entertainment, and I think initially that was happening every Friday. There would be a happy hour that he would go to that, and then he would go to the music. During the summer, that would take place outside, and he would go to that. I think he met most of his friends there in the dining room, but then he would look forward to seeing them at the various activities. I'll say his absolute favorite is art class. And I should have prepared this. He had never taken art in his life. He now goes to the painting class, and it is the highlight of his week. And he is the star painter of the Stafford Hill facility. It is mind blowing. In fact, for Christmas last year, he gave everyone in the family one of his paintings, and it was great. My daughter had recently taken up surfing, and we had a great shot of her, and he painted that. It's amazing. Wow. So there's a men's group. Trying to think of what else. He does the exercise program. There is a movie theater at Stafford Hill. He loves movies. Before the pandemic, my brother and sister and I would go there once a month, and we'd have lunch in the dining hall, and then we'd go down to the movie theater, and each month one of us would pick a movie, and we'd all watch it together. So really, some of the activities provide a way for the family to get together. Since the pandemic, initially everything was shut down, as we all know. And that was difficult. I will share that my husband and I were one of those couples that showed up at the window outside. He's on the first floor, which is a little bit up. So we were looking up, and we felt very socially distanced and very safe. Shortly after that, there was I'm sure a company-wide email saying, please don't show up outside the window. And we'd seen that on TV. We thought it was a great idea to no longer do that. So we stopped that for all the right reasons, obviously. But again, he absolutely missed the activities. He missed the art instructor coming in. He missed the exercise class. Slowly, things are coming back, and some of those things have resumed. I think it was Chris, you were saying, certainly the quality of his life has been affected since the pandemic, as has all of ours. But you know what, here's a good point. I will do, we found an online way to play cards together. So we do that. And then I'll call him at the end of the day. And a couple of months ago, he said, will you stop calling every day? I'm fine. They're taking great care of me here. You don't need to worry so much about me. And that was so freeing. I really felt like I'd already felt like this is a great place for him, but he feels like it's a great place for him.
That's great.
So I hope that answers your question. I mean, it's disappointing that he can't do as much. That makes me worry about his mental health. He can't see his friends as much without sort of, knowing who's going to be where. During the summer, they did sit outside 6 feet apart with masks, and that was sort of a relief. So I think that my biggest worry for him right now is his mental health, not his physical health whatsoever. But I think they work hard to address that as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And I mean, Jody, your enthusiasm in and of itself, when you're talking about all the programming, is contagious. And, you heard about the art program with Wendy. I think both dads should get together and compare.
Yeah.
But I think that would be great.
We did get Christmas presents of paintings last year as well.
Oh, is that right?
That's great.
That's great.
And at Northbridge, it is one of our signature programs that we have an artist in resident program at every single one of our 18 communities. And Jody, I love that you said that he had never painted, because when I first came to Northbridge, I do believe that Stafford Hill was the very first community that I visited, and I walked into a room and there was a woman painting, and I was in awe because I can't even do a stick figure. And I looked down, I'm like, my gosh, how long have you been painting? And she's like, I moved in here about 6 months ago. I had never picked up a paintbrush. This was amazing. So,
So amazing.
the program was born from Wendy and Jim, who both have a passion for the arts and painting. And they really felt as though that is something that everybody could pick up in their lifetime, regardless if, as you just said, your dad never painted. It is something we can all learn. So it is something that is a very big hit at all 18 of our communities and brings joy not only to the residents, but clearly the adult children. So I love that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jody. I really appreciate that. And obviously things have changed for our residents during the pandemic. We cannot offer as much in programming. We will resume that. But what warms my heart, and for anybody listening or watching this Zoom, I really encourage you all to go on to the Facebook pages of the community that you might be interested in, because it really does tell a story. Today, having these guests who are family members as panelists, to me, brings everything to light and really, speaks volumes from their heart. But when you go on Facebook, those aren't models, those aren't, fake anything. That's real life at a Northbridge community. And you could go back further and see life before the pandemic. And every night, it's what I do to calm myself down and to just put a smile on my face. I look at the Facebooks pages of all of our communities, because what our associates are doing in terms of creativity during this pandemic, whether it's a rolling bar, whether it's yoga in the hallways, whether it's dressing up as pilgrims or elves, whether it's, you just can't imagine. So no, it's not the same, Jody, and you're absolutely right. But sadly, it's not the same for any of us right now. And the fact that he said, no, I need to play cards, makes me personally feel great, because he is engaged somehow. So that's great. Sue and Scott, I wanted to come back to you. I wanted to ask you, and we've been chatting about this, throughout, but how do you think Northbridge has handled keeping residents safe throughout this pandemic? But at the same time, as we just were speaking about engagement and lifestyle, juggling that, it is, in life, whether it's your neighborhood, it's your workplace, not everybody's on the same page how this pandemic should be handled. There's some people that refuse to wear a mask. There are some people that won't go out of their homes. But how, as adult children, have you felt Northbridge has handled the pandemic, and combined that with keeping normality as much as we could for the residents?
Sue, I'll jump in. Really well. I mean, it's a really hard situation, right? Because you've got elderly people who don't want to be told what to do, particularly my mother, and very set in her ways. On the other hand, you don't get to be 97, the way my mother is, without doing some things right. And my mother does appreciate the fact that the staff is trying to keep people safe. My mom does not want to get COVID-19. So if there's an explanation why there's a policy in place, she'll get it. She'll be compliant, and she will honor it and go by it. So I would say, what are the aspects? There's been very few cases, which is really great. Whenever I go there, the protocols have been rigorous and real. Like, you don't just skate in the door, you really get stopped. The first time I went there, I got stopped, like, whoa, we don't do that anymore. When they set up the visits, the scheduled visits, the system works great. I've always been able to get over there and schedule a visit with my mom. There's always been someone around watching. Sometimes we sat too close and they came over and said something. Okay, it's annoying in the moment, but it's the right thing to do. Every time I go in there, they, got all the, when I bring her stuff, you bring it into a spot, you don't go in the building, they come out and get it immediately. They wipe it down. So I've been really, really impressed with how they've dealt with the situation from what I've been able to see. I haven't been up to my mom's room, but I talk to her every night and I hear what's going on for her. And I think, as I said early on, I can't imagine a different situation for her that would work as well. And the other thing I'll say is I think the communication's been excellent, whether it's through email, that you've done a really good job. The emails are businesslike, professional. Here's what we're doing. Here's the policies. So I feel like your communication's been good. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Scott.
Subi?
Thank you for appreciating when the associates might have to say you're sitting too close, and not everybody does appreciate that. And it is hard because basically none of us really like to be told what to do, and none of us really like the rules. So it's hard. Sue, did you want to elaborate at all?
I think I just want to say that I just remember at the very beginning when we didn't know everything that was happening, when this first hit. And I remember that Scott's mom, Sophie, called and said that she had spoken to another resident who'd been to the doctor, to her own doctor outside of the community. And the doctor said, it's going to get to you in Stonebridge, right? It's like Stonebridge is going to have it and there will be an outbreak. And I remember my stomach turning. And I think it's incredible and amazing and remarkable that in fact that has not happened. Yes, there have been cases, and I don't know how that could be avoided. To go unscathed would be, I don't know how that could happen, but highly impressed. And I think it is a balance between, Jody pointed to it, I think it was Jody that said it, the mental health and the physical health, how those dance together is a challenge for sure. And I think I've appreciated because I worry most, I don't want her alone in a hallway in a hospital. Kind of really don't want that. And I know none of us do. And, so I've appreciated the cautious approach to reintroducing things and having the dining room, back open with safety measures. For her, most of her joy, I think, Scott, comes from all the little moments of relationship. She's kind of a gal about town, chatting it up. What about this? What about that? More than a painter, right? She hasn't fallen into that, but she's definitely feels safe, and that's worth a lot. And I think she really feels cared for. And not that this is pertinent to that specific question, but I just have to say, Wendy's dad, as she referred to, is in Stonebridge, and that's the same community that we're in. And we have a painting in our house that's done by Wendy's dad of our daughter when she was a little girl. So I appreciate the kind of environment where
I think
that
Sue
where that would
froze.
happen. Oh, I did. Mel froze, maybe, I don't know. I appreciate the kind of environment where that kind of connection would happen, and he would do that for our mother-in-law, based on this little photo she had. So very sweet.
Mel, can I say one other thing? Because Sue reminded me of something. It circles back to what you look for in a community. My mom was in the hospital in February, and she was in for a while, and you could see what was coming, right? And it was like, oh my God, we got to get her out of here. And she was slowly getting better in the hospital. So the question on the table was, would she be able to go from the hospital to Stonebridge, or would she need to go to rehab? And I spent a lot of time looking at rehab places. And because the concern was that she wouldn't be well enough to go right back to the assisted living situation. She'd need more help. But thank God, she was released from the hospital to Stonebridge. And it was because the staff at Stonebridge communicated with the hospital that they would catch her. And that if she needed more services, they could step it up. And that was like a lifesaver, because Lord knows what would have happened if we had done the rehab dance. She would have been bummed out. It would have been March. She'd be in rehab. Yikes, right? So the fact that there was a flexibility on the part of the staff to adjust to her and bring her back slowly and help her was immeasurable. And I just remembered that right now. It's been so long ago, but I want to make sure I said that.
Wow, thank you both. Thank you. So I'm going to be mindful of the time here, and I have really 4 more questions. So, and it's been amazing, really, your candid conversations. And I do want to say, and I know that everybody on this call can confirm, this is not practiced. I did give the panelists an idea of the questions that I was going to be asking, but some of them I've changed up a little bit along the way, and I did not know any of the answers. So it's really been amazing to hear, and I truly appreciate all of your candid conversations. Chris, you mentioned this, a little bit, talking about the love and that feeling. But how have things changed for you and your wife, knowing that there is personal care services 24/7 at Avita Stroudwater? And, how has that, over the years, how has that affected you all, knowing that the care is there?
It's an interesting time to be asked that question. Pat has gone through a very dramatic decline in the last 10 months. Quite likely the same decline she would have gone through with or without the pandemic, but certainly made more difficult with the pandemic. She's in hospice level care now and is coming toward the end of her life. There are days when she can take care of things, where she get up and, and there are days when she just has no cognizance. And staff adjust just effortlessly to that. One of the things that's hard to talk about in this arena is that all of our parents are going to pass along the way. We've already had Rod, Pat's husband, pass 2 years ago at Avita. The most exquisite, caring, loving experience we could have ever imagined. And I just want to tell a quick story that tells us how to anticipate that with Pat, even if we're still in the pandemic, which is quite possible. There are dozens of stories when Rod was sleeping all day and so on, but a moment that we left and I said, I don't know how to be more grateful for this. The Rod was needing to be turned every couple of hours to make sure he didn't get bed sores and so on. And we were there doing a visit, and the nurse and an aide came in. And of course, he would have the blankets up to here, and each time they would go, they have to bring the blankets down. And his body, he had Parkinson's as well, and his body would go into the shakes. And they could have, done that, turned to position and covered him back up. But they did that, he went into the shakes and everything stopped. And the nurse just stroked his arm and said, "It's all right, Rod, we'll wait. We'll wait." And waited until his whole body settled down and then shifted him, covered him back up. It was like, they didn't need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So as we see that time coming for Pat and think about that care we know that, we know now through the hospice nurse that they've made sure a music, a radio we have in there with all her favorite music is on even as she's sleeping most of the days. And that a Wi-Fi picture frame that we can email pictures to and, you know, flows through automatically, they make sure that's on. So that when she opens her eyes, she sees those images, she hears those things. So it is those little pieces of caring, that extra mile stuff that just makes all the difference, even at a time when that feels scary and uncomfortable and, oh my goodness, to have to go through this, not being able to have contact is very difficult. And yet we know we can soothe ourselves with the knowledge of what's going on there with her.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. A very challenging time. All of it being life and all being, with a pandemic that has, changed life as we know it right now. So thank you. Thank you for trusting the caregivers throughout this difficult time.
I think that's the thing, is that the pandemic has changed everything. I don't think it's changed the level of care.
Right. Thank you. And Jody, I wanted to ask you a little bit on a lighter note. When you and your dad were making this decision, how did you decide on Stafford Hill? I can't imagine that was the only community that you looked at. So what made Stafford Hill become your dad's new home?
So, as I had said, my father was living in Florida. All of my siblings, we're up here. My dad's originally from Vermont. So he knew he wanted to be back in New England. He knew it was time to sell his house. And so he moved into Stafford Hill in 2018. So in 2017, he was up here around the holidays, and then he came back in the summer. And he and I together looked at 3 facilities, including Stafford Hill. And then while he was in Florida, I looked at 2 others. And really, honestly, in my opinion, there wasn't any competition for Stafford Hill. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on the call. This is really touching because as I'm listening to everyone, and as I was trying to prepare for the call, thinking who we were speaking to, there are other facilities that have nice amenities. But there was no other facility that felt right. And so we can talk about food, we can talk about activities. Actually, I don't know what her title was, but I think she was in marketing, Janet Mahoney. She was our person. And she said to me, this will be your father's home. So when you come here, you're visiting his house. You're not coming into a hotel. When you check in at the front desk, it's just to let us know who's in the building. And all of a sudden I could see it differently. It's a beautiful facility, but all of a sudden I was feeling like, oh, this is a home, right? This is a community. It's not a facility, it's a community. And I felt that. I think a couple of the things that attracted my father to it, he likes the style of the building. He likes the way it's laid out. So coming from, again, fractured hip, I'm sorry, but the funny story is he was supposed to move into Stafford Hill on March 9th. My husband and I flew down to Florida on the 7th. I went over to help him pack up his house on the 8th, the rest of the house. I knocked on the door and I heard him screaming, help, help, help. He was in the back room. He had fallen and broken his hip that morning. We had to do the house closing in the hospital with a lawyer who was willing to come there and wrap things up before he went under. It was just a real fiasco. But knowing Stafford Hill was there and the way that they worked with us, send his stuff, he's going to be in rehab, do what you need to do. It was amazing. That doesn't answer your question, but it speaks to why we chose it, because we felt, oh, all right, they have our back. We are now part of the family, and that is exactly what we felt. The other component that I will add, Stafford Hill is 3.5 miles from my house. If Stafford Hill was 20 miles from our house, we still would have picked it. But the fact that it's only 3 miles was sort of the icing on the cake.
That's great. Well, I started out this conversation a little bit about that feeling and about the people. And you spoke about Janet, you spoke about the feeling. And it is that feeling that you might get. I honestly could probably spend another 3 hours with all of you. The stories that you have shared, the heartfelt conversations, the real stories. I certainly hope that those of you listening to us, watching us, got the same feeling that I did. Learning and looking into a senior living community truly is a journey. But for so many, it does, as you've heard from Jody, from Sue, from Scott, from Chris and Wendy, it truly does enhance the quality of lives of the senior population. Not only does it enhance their quality of life, it provides them with that sense of independence. I think back to the story Chris told about Pat making the decision that she wants to move here. So it really is a combination of both. Why should you have to give up your independence when you reach a certain age? That's something that you want to hang on to. You have to give up so many other things. And we take that very seriously at Northbridge. But at the same time, for those of you that are adult children or in-laws on this call, you want to know about the care. You want to know about the love. You want to know about the feelings. And that is something that you will get when you're speaking to people. And you really've got to make sure, whether you're looking at a Northbridge community or another community, you've got to make sure you're meeting the people, you're asking those questions, and that you are taking the time throughout to get that feel and that sense of it. We cannot, so I want to first of all thank Jody so much for being part of this. I'm so glad that we have found out that we have a connection. Jody's father-in-law is my neighbor, which we've learned. Sue and Scott Richardson, I so appreciate you being on this line. Sue and I go way back in high school days. And Chris, you've been such a friend of Northbridge for so many years. We appreciate the trust that you have put into us and the partnership that we've had. And Wendy Nowakunski, the owner of Northbridge, and George's daughter, thank you for sharing your story, your wisdom with all of us. And before we get off, I want to just ask you to take a peek at the beautiful pictures that we've put up. Yes, life is not the same for any of us right now, but every day we're striving to bring joy to our residents, albeit in a different way. It's happening, and we're having a lot of fun. And truly, our residents continue to be engaged and having purpose in life, whether it be marshmallow on their nose or a drive-by birthday party, but it's all happening. So thank you to those of you that joined us tonight. I wish you all a wonderful holiday season. I encourage you all to reach out to one of our advisors, or to me, or to Wendy, or any one of us. If you would like my contact information or Wendy's contact information, please don't hesitate to ask on your chat. And most importantly, stay well, stay safe, and let's pray all together that flickering light that we see coming through the vaccine comes soon. So thank you so very much, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mel.